I never planned to become someone who takes revenge. That was never who I was. I was the person who forgave too easily, stayed too long, and believed too deeply in people who never deserved that belief. But everyone has a limit. And the day I found out what my boss had done, I found mine. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because this story did not start with anger. It started with trust. I had worked at that company for 4 years. 4 years of early mornings and late nights. 4 years of skipping vacations and missing birthdays. 4 years of putting that job above almost everything else in my life because I genuinely believed it would pay off. And for a long time it seemed like it would. My boss, David, had always told me I was his most valuable team member. He said it in meetings. He said it in my performance reviews. He even said it once in front of the entire department, which made me feel proud in a way I had never felt before at work. I trusted him completely. Which was my first mistake. About 18 months ago, our company announced a massive new project. A full restructuring of our client management system. It was the kind of project that could define careers. The kind that gets noticed by people at the very top. David asked me to lead the research phase. I said yes immediately. I spent 3 months on it. 3 months of weekends, of evenings, of notebooks filled with ideas and frameworks and strategies that I had built entirely from scratch. I presented my findings to David in a closed meeting. Just the two of us. He listened carefully, asked questions, took notes. At the end he looked at me and said, "This is exceptional work. I am proud of you." I went home that evening feeling like everything was finally about to change. 2 weeks later, David presented the project strategy to the board of directors. I was not in that meeting. I found out about it from a colleague who mentioned it casually over lunch. I asked David about it afterward. He said it was a last-minute thing, nothing formal, just an informal conversation. He smiled and told me not to worry. I believed him. Second mistake. A month passed. Then another. The project moved forward and I noticed something strange. My name appeared nowhere in the documentation. My frameworks, my research, my strategies were being used daily, but every reference pointed to David as the originator. I told myself I was being paranoid. That credit would come. That David would make sure I was recognized when the time was right. Then the promotion was announced. David was named Vice President of Client Strategy. A role created specifically around the project. The project built on my work. My research. My ideas. I found out the same way everyone else did. A company-wide email on a Thursday morning. I sat at my desk and read that email 3 times. Then I stood up, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stood there in silence for a long time. I was not going to cry. I was not going to scream. I was going to think. Because in that moment, something shifted inside me. The part of me that always forgave, always gave the benefit of the doubt, always stayed quiet to keep the peace, that part went completely silent. And a new part of me woke up. I went back to my desk and I started documenting everything. Every email. Every meeting note. Every draft. Every timestamp on every file I had ever created for that project. I had been meticulous in my work and that meticulousness was now my greatest weapon. I reached out quietly to 2 colleagues who had been in early planning meetings. People who knew what my contribution had been. People who I trusted and who, it turned out, were just as uncomfortable with what had happened as I was. I did not tell them what I was planning. I simply asked if they remembered certain conversations. They did. And they were willing to say so. Then I did something David never expected. I requested a meeting with the head of human resources and the chief operating officer. Not to complain. Not to cause a scene. but to present documentation. I walked into that meeting with printed emails, time-stamped files, meeting notes in my own handwriting, and 2 colleagues willing to confirm my account. I was calm. I was professional. I was completely prepared. I laid everything out clearly and without emotion. I explained what I had contributed, when I had contributed it, and what the record showed about how that contribution had been represented to senior leadership. There was a long silence when I finished. The COO asked me several questions. I answered each one precisely. The HR director took notes the entire time. I thanked them for their time and I left. For 2 weeks I heard nothing. I kept coming to work. I kept doing my job. I did not mention the meeting to anyone. I did not change my behavior toward David in any way. I smiled when I needed to smile. I attended every meeting. I delivered every deadline. David had no idea. Then on a Monday morning I was called into the COO's office. Alone. She told me that after a thorough review, the company had concluded that my contributions to the project had been significantly misrepresented in communications to senior leadership. She said the company took this seriously. She said they wanted to make it right. David was removed from the vice president role within the week. The official announcement cited a restructuring. But everyone who worked closely with that project understood what had actually happened. I was offered a newly created role. Senior strategist, reporting directly to the COO. A title above what David had held. A salary I had stopped letting myself dream about. I accepted quietly. I did not celebrate openly. I did not say a single word to David about any of it. The most satisfying part was not the title or the salary. It was the morning 3 weeks later when I walked past David in the corridor and he looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. He finally understood. Not because I told him. But because the truth had simply become impossible to ignore. People sometimes ask me if I feel guilty about what I did. I always think carefully before I answer that question. I did not lie. I did not manipulate. I did not destroy anyone. I simply gathered the truth, organized it clearly, and placed it in front of the people who needed to see it. If there is a lesson in this story, it is not about revenge. It is about documentation. It is about patience. It is about understanding that the truth does not need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be undeniable. If this story resonated with you, you are not alone. Subscribe for new stories every Tuesday and Friday. And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, share it with them. I will see you in the next one.